Before we begin, please imagine the bell notification is on and you're subscribed to Huna Stories. I thought I was bringing my son somewhere safe. That was the assumption I didn't question. The way you don't question gravity when you put your feet on the ground. My parents' house had always been loud with rules and quiet with affection. But it was still the place people sent children when they needed help. It had always been that way. The visit wasn't meant to be dramatic. I had work travel, 2 days. I packed his backpack carefully, pajamas, toothbrush, the book he liked to pretend he could read on his own. I reminded him to say thank you. I reminded myself not to hover. When I dropped him off, my mother said, "We'll manage," in a tone that suggested she was doing me a favor. I nodded. That was familiar. I left before the feeling in my chest could finish forming. The first day passed quietly. No calls, no complaints. I told myself that was good news. That night, when I texted to ask if he'd eaten, my mother replied hours later, "Yes, he's fine. X." The words fine did a lot of work in my family. It covered absence, it covered neglect, it covered things no one wanted to explain. The next morning, my son didn't call. He usually did. I told myself he was busy. I told myself I was projecting. I had learned early that suspicion was considered rudeness. When I arrived to pick him up on the third day, he was sitting on the floor by the radiator, knees pulled to his chest, not crying, not sleeping, just folded inward like he had decided space was something he needed to conserve. I said his name, and he looked up slowly, as if moving his head cost him something. I noticed the bowl on the counter first, empty, clean. The kitchen smelled unused. I asked him if he was hungry. He nodded once. That was when my mother said it from the doorway, not unkindly, just firmly, as if clarifying a misunderstanding. "He's just a visitor. He's not our family." I turned to her. My father was behind her, arms crossed, saying nothing. "There's no reason to waste food," she continued. "He didn't ask. Children need to learn." The sentence didn't rise or fall. It landed. I didn't argue. That surprised her. She was used to arguments, used to the noise of defense and explanation. I picked my son up instead. He didn't protest, he didn't cling, he just rested his head against my shoulder with a heaviness that made my arms ache. I fed him at a cafe 2 blocks away. Soup first, slowly. That because I knew better than to rush. He ate without speaking, eyes fixed on the table, as if food were something that might disappear if acknowledged too directly. I watched his hands stop shaking. I did not go back to my parents' house. That night, after he slept, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the shock arrive fully. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with tears. It came as a narrowing, like my world had just shed a layer. I hadn't known this optional. I reviewed the facts. 2 days, no meals, a decision framed as principle, no apology offered because none was needed in their view. I understood then that this wasn't a mistake, it was policy. In the morning, I canceled the payments. There was no speech attached to it, no message. I didn't explain my reasoning because reasoning implies debate, and debate implies that someone still has standing. I closed accounts, I redirected funds, I unsubscribed from obligations that had never been formalized but had been relied upon all the same. The calls came quickly. At first, they were confused, then indignant, then wounded. My mother left a message saying I was overreacting. My father texted that family handles things internally. That phrase, handles things internally, had always meant silence in one direction and endurance in the other. I didn't respond. The authority entered quietly, the way it usually does. A pediatrician visit, routine on paper. Weight noted, dehydration noted. Questions asked in neutral tones. A form filled out, a follow-up scheduled. Then a call from a school counselor who had noticed changes. She used careful language, as concerning indictmentation. Support services appeared. Paper replaced argument. Dates replaced excuses. When my parents realized this was no longer a conversation but a record, their tone changed again. They wanted to meet, to explain, to contextualize. My mother cried on the phone for the first time in years and said she hadn't meant it that way. I believed her. That was the problem, though that way was the way it happened, the way it always would have happened again.
The financial consequences unfolded without drama. A business loan they depended on didn't renew. A property they had assumed would remain subsidized wasn't. Doors closed not because I slammed them, but because I stopped holding them open. They told relatives I had abandoned them. They told friends I had misunderstood. They did not tell anyone about the bowl on the counter. I did not correct the story. My son recovered. Children do when given consistency and enough calories and the sense that someone is watching. He asked once if he had done something wrong. I told him no, and I meant it so fully that it surprised both of us. At night, when the house was quiet, I felt the grief come and go. Not grief for what I lost, but for what was never real. The idea that blood guaranteed care, that help once given transformed the giver into family. It hadn't. I don't feel victorious. There was no moment where balance felt restored. There is just a clean line where something ended. I protect my child now without explaining myself. I do not answer calls that ask for reconciliation without accountability. I do not negotiate food, safety, or dignity. What my parents lost was not everything. What they lost was access. And what I gained was the certainty that some boundaries don't need to be announced to be permanent.